Olá, pessoal, sejam muito bem-vindos à nossa primeira live aqui. Primeira live não, mais uma live, mas dessa vez com um convidado muito especial, convidado direto de Seattle, o nosso queridíssimo Evan Hill. Ele vai estar lá de Seattle comentando, trocando uma ideia com a gente aqui hoje. E a gente vai estar conversando aqui em inglês, obviamente, ele não entende português, mas não se preocupe, a gente vai pegar alguns cortes, vai publicar aí durante os próximos dias, pegar as partes mais interessantes dessa live, legendar para vocês e não se preocupe, a gente vai estar aqui o tempo inteiro. E se vocês quiserem deixar seus comentários, perguntas aí para ele, já deixam aí no chat e, e a gente vai falando com ele aqui, a gente vai trocando essa ideia. So let's start. Evan, welcome. Thank you to be here. We're really happy to have you here. You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's funny because this is my first foreign Seahawks podcast appearance. So hopefully you were not saying bad things about me the past 45 seconds because I would have no idea otherwise. So, but I trust that they were good things. But yeah, no, appreciate you having me on. I'm a co-host of Real Hawk Talk, do a lot of writing for Hawk Blogger, and do a lot of salary cap, NFL contract related sort of research and analysis. And that's really how I sort of got my start in the NFL world, I guess you could say. I contributed to a website called Over the Cap for a while. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but they're a salary cap, I guess you could say database and sort of analysis-based organization that focuses exclusively on NFL contracts. So yeah, that's me. Other than that, I'm a talking head. I have phenomenal food opinions and opinions about the Seahawks. So.
Yeah, here in Brazil, we have a word that describes things like that. We have a word like a pistola. It's that thick. So you are famous here in Brazil for the Hawks fan. Yes, we know that you have this hot take like oh no, fire Pete Carroll right now, or goodbye Russell Wilson.
I'm an emotional Seahawks fan, man. It's it's bad.
Yeah, and here in Brazil, we are this way in football, in our soccer.
Okay.
So create this relation with you, because
actually here is a little bit worse because we are not used to not win. If your team here not win, the coach is fired.
Yeah,
like right off the bat.
Yeah, because here we have like 5 competitions so if you don't win anything, you mostly gonna be fired.
Wow. Yeah. So Pete Carroll would not survive a day in Brazil.
Oh, no,
it sounds like.
No. Yeah. Not a day.
2011, he can survive that season, and that is worse in football. But here in Brazil, we are very we want rest immediately. So if you win, okay, you stay. If you lose, bye bye, guy. So when you tweet these hot takes with some emotion, we here in Brazil are laughing, agree or disagree, but it's
well, I want to remind you of the cardinal rule of sports fandom. You are not allowed to judge anybody's tweets day of and during the game. They do not count in the court of sports opinions. They do not count. So I want to make sure that evidence is excluded from any court cases brought against me.
I think it's funny because like here in the blog, we are always looking at the opinions from Brazilians and you guys, Americans, obviously on Twitter. But it's so different because Brazilians are, like they were talking about, they criticize so much, you know, like during the game, they already want to fire and cut so many of the players just because they made mistakes. while we go on Seattle Twitter, and sometimes, but not as much.
That's really interesting. I would not have guessed that, but now that you mention it, there's definitely a sort of a big portion, I think, of. I don't think it's just reserved for Seattle, but American sports in general. It's like if there's almost this like unsaid sort of judgment that if you criticize your team, you're not a true fan of that team.
Yeah.
And I could not disagree more with that. Like I will always love the Seahawks, but I am going to criticize the hell out of them when they deserve it because I love them. And it's a sign of my love for them that I criticize them. I'm not putting on these fan blinders, or I try not to put on these fan blinders, that show me that everything is perfect and unicorns and fairy tales. It's just not that reality. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's what I think it's so funny because like Brazilians identify themselves with you so much because you are like that. And that's why when we were promoting the live, so many people were telling us like, oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. And you guys like have to argue with him because he's not going to take a step back. He just gives his opinion. So,
well, I'll tell you this, anything I say, I truly believe. Like I love the Seahawks. They cause me a great amount of stress and emotional anxiety. And I don't know why I succumb to this. I don't know why. It's not a healthy relationship. Like if this was any sort of like real life relationship with like a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a friendship, I would tell you as your therapist to cut off the relationship. Like it's a horrible negative thing, but here I am. I love the Seahawks.
Yeah, actually, in America, if your team makes to the playoffs, you're all gonna say, yeah, that's a good run. But in Brazil, the playoffs are nothing. So we are definitely need to win. Tom Brady mentality.
So that's one question I wanted to ask of you guys. Is the threshold for success in Brazil, obviously primarily with football, soccer, is the threshold for success a championship or is it just a winning season? Like what's success in Brazil?
Championship.
I think that like it depends. For Seattle, the thing is the reason why Seattle is so popular in Brazil, it's because the NFL got more popular around 2011, 12, 13, and the Seahawks were dominating, the LOB, whatnot. And so because of that, that's what Brazilian Seattle fans expect of the Seahawks. They expect to see, the defense completely dominating the opponent and winning the Super Bowl probably. So the threshold for Seattle fans, it's a championship, and that's why Brazilian Seattle fans are considered annoying for a lot of other fan bases because we are always like, we just made the playoffs, that's not enough. But I wouldn't say that's true to every team because maybe the Chiefs, the Patriots, but Packers. But other than that, like I think they understand the situation.
But let me ask you about non-US sports teams in like Brazil, like the Brazilian soccer team, your national soccer team. Like what is success for the Brazilian national soccer team? Is it just a winning season or is it like winning the World Cup or
like the guys said before, we have more than one competition here. So there are minors competitions and the major championship. So when you're a coach here, you need to win something. This is a regional or because if you have a great team, build a great team with great players and something like that, and you not win, the first false step that you made, you should be fired, guy. So it's something.
The crowd eventually knows that your team is not gonna win because in soccer we don't have cap. So the team that spend the most, he should win. If he doesn't win, you have a problem. But if you are not cheering for a big team, you know that your team is not gonna win, so you don't get very upset.
Makes sense. It's like baseball in the United States where there's no salary cap. I get it.
And it's different here because I think that NFL was created to try make the things equal to all teams. So the draft order, the compensatory picks, free agent, and the cap salary. And here in Brazil, we haven't anything like that. So there are teams that are so much rich and take the big contracts, and other teams that no. So you know that if your team it's small, you don't win a team with the big contract in TV and something like that.
Makes sense.
It's one of the first thing that I love in NFL. It's because it was created to maintain the competition. So you have teams that are in losing teams, but 10 years later it's like a Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Two seasons ago, the fan base here in Brazil, it's almost nothing. So they win the Super Bowl. So now the fan base it's grown up.
Yeah, the franchise system in general in the American sports are just so different from Brazil, and we would have to talk for hours to talk about the differences. Like we have sports in college here, but they don't give as much audience to it. So like it's just a completely different system. So the expectations are also different,
So let's start some questions. The first question, I think that all fun here are waiting for this question. Would you fire Pete Carroll right now if you
Start John
this year? Yeah.
So I'll answer this question in a way I think that may surprise you. Would I fire him right this second? No, because you need to have a strong, capable replacement, for him in place. And there's a couple of names out there, like the Chiefs offensive coordinator, maybe Doug Peterson, you could lure out of, his 1-year break. That names that are interesting out there. But would I fire him right this second? No. As much as I don't like Pete Carroll, and I do think, he coaches, he's a really strong. Here's the thing about Pete Carroll. He does all the hard things really well, but he does all the easy things really poorly. So, making in-game decisions with clock management, going for it on fourth down, run versus pass philosophies, all those sort of like easy decisions, he completely misses the mark on. But
running at the 1-yard line.
Exactly. All the hard stuff, which is like culture building, executive leadership, player management. He does those things really well. So it's not like it's not like Pete Carroll is all bad. It's just I think he's worn out his stay. I think in Seattle, at least among a good portion of the fan base. So to answer your question, would I fire him right this second? No, but if you could find a capable replacement, and I acknowledge there is risk in changing head coaches. I don't think it's, there's a chance it backfires. I want to be very clear about that. It's not 100% certain that, they're suddenly going to start making Super Bowls. In fact, I would probably not expect that. So I just think you have to have a capable replacement in mind.
But we right now hire the Carl Smith, that long-time friend of the Pete Carroll, and he supposed to working in some things like that, management time and timeouts and something like that. Do you have any hope that it's better this season?
No, because Carl Smith was here for Carl Tater Smith is what they call him. Tater. Tater's was here for like years with Pete. In 2015, 2016, 2017. I think it was 2018 or 2019 he left. I think it was 2019. And it was still just as poor then. So it's like I don't really like that hire, frankly. It just seems like name a quarterback that Carl Tater Smith has developed that turned out to be a really good quarterback outside of Russell Wilson. You can't name a single one. He's just kind of it feels like a nepotistic hire, to be quite honest with you. So I hate to be negative, but I don't have hope with that hire. I don't think he's going to change the status quo.
Okay. And about we knew the new offensive coordinator that you're in.
Yeah,
are you in the hype, Shane Waldron and Landon Dickerson also to working in the run game and offensive line?
I'm cautiously optimistic about Shane Waldron. I think what he did with Jared Goff in LA as their quarterbacks coach was impressive. There were absolutely moments where he made Jared Goff look like a superstar, and Jared Goff is not a superstar. So I think anytime you have a coach that can make a player shine like that, even if it's on an inconsistent basis, I think that's noteworthy. I think that says something. But outside of that, like Sean McVay's, the scheme he runs in LA is really impressive with vertical and horizontal concepts, like changing the tempo, keeping defenses off balance. Like, it's just impressive. They adapt every single year. Yes, they still like to run the football a lot. So I think that's why Pete was willing to, make that hire. But I do think Russell had a pretty significant presence in voice in that hiring process. So I'm cautiously optimistic about Shane Waldron. I don't think it's if I was a betting man, I wouldn't be surprised if the Seahawks had their best offensive year next year under Pete Carroll. So in the Pete Carroll era, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And about Jared Goff here in Brazil with a joke that he's a Ryan Gosling. I don't know the actor. So if you change that, nobody is see the difference in the field.
Yeah, Jared Goff is. I still don't understand why the Lions gave up what they did to get Jared Goff, but it was a weird trade. I'm kind of sad, frankly, for him to be outside the division. Like, Jared Goff always gave us a chance in Rams games, but with Matthew Stafford now, I'm like, oh shit! Like, this is you kind of have to chalk. Like, when we do our season predictions for Real Hawk Talk in 4 or 5 months or whatever, I am absolutely chalking those 2 Rams games as losses. Like, you can't convince me that the Seahawks, at least from a prediction focused, deserve to win those games. Like, the Rams are better teams, straight up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you think about this Russell Wilson history? And because we know that here in Brazil and we see that some insiders there in US talking about the run, pass, punt, and something like that. But in the last year, we see the let Russ cook.
Yeah.
And now we fired the Schottenheimer and hire Shane Waldron. So the things seems like better right now. And when the things are better, so Russell Wilson go to the press and talk things like that. I don't know if I'm important to Seattle, or I don't want leave Seattle, but if I want, I like to go to Dallas, Chicago, New Orleans,
well, this relationship is a game of leverage. That's the reality. Like, these Mark Rodgers, who is Russell Wilson's agent, this is a game of cat and mouse, but with high stakes leverage of your franchise quarterback. I think there was a report that came out a couple of weeks ago that listed Russell's 3 demands confidentially to the organization. It was make that OC hire, agree on the direction or future of the franchise, and then make a material, meaningful investment in the offensive line. I think he got number 1 with the Shane Waldron hire. We'll see what happens with the offensive line and free agency. The tampering period starts on
17, I think.
Yeah, so I think free agency actually starts on the 17th, and then like the legal tampering period, which is just dumb, but it is what it is, where they can't sign contracts, but they can officially negotiate with agents, is on the 15th. So that's Monday. The cap decreased this year, but those premium top tier of offensive linemen are still going to get paid big bucks. Like, Joe Thuney, Corey Linsley are sort of like the top two players, I feel like. And there's a ton of really solid, like veteran, above average guard talent. A ton of guys have been cut in recent days. So this is the reality. If Seattle does not make a real significant material investment in the offensive line, and we'll have resolution soon, because those guys are not going to last on the market. Like, we're going to know in like a week and a half from now whether Seattle is serious about protecting Russell Wilson and caving or agreeing to his demands. So what do I think about this whole situation? I've asked people I know on within Seattle's organization, and I've spoken with people in Russell Wilson's camp, and it's not a flashy answer, but I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know, Russell's agent has come out pretty aggressively and said, we need to fix things. We're done. We are done sitting on the sidelines and waiting and praying and having hope that things are just going to change, because they're not going to. I think John Schneider and Pete Carroll have lost the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt anymore. They very well may, build a roster resurgence and protect Russell Wilson for the first time in his career. But Russell Wilson has been silent for a decade. Okay. He's been silent for a decade about the atrocious, historically, consistently awful offensive lines that he has dealt with. And every single season, every single offseason, it was just all you heard from Russell was "Go Hawks, go Hawks." We're gonna improve. Next year it's gonna be real. Okay. And it was always unrelenting positivity. And every single offseason, hell, after every single game, Seahawks fans would say, "Where's Russell Wilson's transparency? Why is he so polished as a interviewee? Why does he seem to say things that are so rehearsed?" Well, guess what? Now Russell is finally coming out and saying some things that make people a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and guess what? It's the truth. These are uncomfortable truths. So, I fully support him coming out and speaking up. Like, any fan who tells you one of those Russell Wilson's 3 demands are wrong or inappropriate are completely off base. Because ask any Seahawks fan anywhere in the world, should the Seahawks do a better job of protecting Russell Wilson? There's only one answer. It's yes. You're insane. You're insane if you say no. So yeah, that was a sort of stream of consciousness, but that's where my head's at.
I see that, and I agree. I do think all those demands are like, they should, he's right. Like, Seattle has been neglecting all these things for so long. I agree with that.
And you know what? Let me jump in. He's earned the right to say these things. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's not just a rookie coming in here. And if he had said these things in 2012, 2013, a year, 2 years into the NFL, still on his rookie contract, not a veteran, not a Super Bowl winner, not somebody who's carried, the team on his back for nearly a decade, then I'm more sympathetic to the criticism towards him. But this dude is going on the 10th year. I think it's his 10th year in the NFL, the 10th or 11th. He's like 31, 32 years old. He's a Super Bowl winner. He's been carrying this team on his back for 6 to 7 years now. Okay. The Legion of Boom has been gone for a while now. The only 95% of the reason this team is winning any freaking games right now is Russell Wilson playing hero football in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so absolutely. But my only issue with it's like, I worry about how much it might hurt our free agency, because if you are a O-line player and Seattle comes after you to hire you, and you don't know if Russell Wilson is going to stay, like, will you take that? And not just O-line, because we also need pass rushers. We're probably going to need a defensive tackle or another cornerback, a running back. will they want to come to a team that doesn't know if Wilson will stay?
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I actually had that exact conversation. Somebody brought that up in our like Real Hawk Talk group chat the other day, and this was my counter to that. Yes, I think that's a valid comment, but let's say you're looking for a new job, okay, and you're considering like 5 different companies, okay, and one of those 5 companies, let's call them the Seattle Seahawks. That's one of the companies, and you don't know if their CEO, so one of the most important people in the business, is going to leave the company, but the company offers you, 20% more in pay than any of the other 4 companies. So you're going to make $100,000 at this company instead of $80K at those other 4 companies. At some point, money talks. You know what I mean? And you're going to take that position regardless of what's going on with Russell Wilson, because it means an extra $2 million in your bank account. You know what I mean? And many of these players are just, trying to feed their families and set themselves up for financial success. Like, we as fans only view it, I get it, through like the, how successful is our team going to be? But these players, they're trying to secure a bag. You know what I mean? And they should be like that. That should be their focus. So I just think money is a powerful convincer.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with that. But like, I just feel like Seattle, in the situation we are in right now with our cap and how many free agents we have to resign, I don't know. I just kind of expect Russell Wilson to come out and say, I will restructure my contract to open this many $1 million.
Well, you know why he doesn't say that? You know why he doesn't say that?
Because he doesn't know if we're gonna sign a new line.
No, because he might be traded.
Yeah,
it's not a foregone. I'm not saying it's likely, but there's like, it's like what I said earlier. It's a game of leverage. Like, Mark Rodgers, his agent, has come out super aggressively naming trade landing destinations 4 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago when the season ended. Could you have imagined 2 months later? Now we're talking about Russell Wilson's agent coming out publicly saying, I would accept a trade to the Chicago Bears. We'd all look at that person and call them insane. You know what I mean? These are public, aggressive remarks. It is a tool to increase their leverage as a player and the situation around him. If the Seahawks do not, for example, believe that Russell Wilson will play, another season for them unless they finally decide to start protecting him, that's a powerful piece of leverage. If the Seahawks genuinely believe that is a powerful piece of leverage. So the reason Russell Wilson isn't coming out and saying those things is because, guess what? Him not saying that increases his leverage against the team, and it's what he should do.
Yeah, I think that Russell Wilson really earned to say the things that he say, but his agents go to the media and talk the way he talked. I think it's a little bit too aggressive. Maybe, sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think that he put himself on a position that he has to restructure his own contract, because if he does not do that, I don't know why are you staying at Seattle if the team cannot sign a good OL. I don't know if what Russell Wilson is really thinking if he does not do that.
Yeah, I think that what Mateus are saying, it's my next question. If Russell Wilson should be traded, because I think like that. It's an analogy in a relationship. And a couple, and the guy betrayed his girlfriend, and he knows that, and he stick together. But the first fail of that guy, she will say, "Oh, are you betraying me again?" So I think it's okay. We stay with Russell Wilson in this season. I don't know. We hire something like Joe Thuney or Corey Linsley, and we lost in divisional round again. Next year, Russell Wilson will back to the press and some say things like that again. So we are put the problem to the next year. You are think that if we attend some demands of the Russell Wilson, we can solve this problem, even if we lost in wild card or something like that.
Yeah, what do you think, Evan? Next year, if we lost, even if we sign good people for protect Wilson, he will stay in Seattle?
I do. I do think he will. He wants to. Russell's primary priority beyond the Seahawks is the longevity of his career. It's the health of his body. He's on record numerous times saying, he wants to play till he's 43, 44, 45 years old. He's not going to be able to play to 43, 44, or 45 years old if he keeps getting hit at the rate he's been getting hit the past decade. I'm not even talking sacks. I'm not talking quarterback sacks. I'm talking quarterback hits. Like that number, we don't have it recorded, but it's some ass. He's probably been hit in the thousands of times. Like his body, no matter how much good nutrition he has, and no matter how much he works out, no matter how many, medical massages he gets a week, like no matter what he does, like he's human at the end of the day. His body is not going to tolerate that amount of hits at its current rate. So I think something has to change, because right now they're not doing a good enough job protecting Russell Wilson. Now, the first 8 weeks of last season, they were. The offensive line was good the first 8 weeks of last season. Everybody kind of forgets that, but the offensive line was like top 10 in the NFL through the first 8 weeks last year. But it pretty much fell off a cliff as injuries started to happen throughout the year. I think that's potentially synonymous with why Russell Wilson, started to play poorly towards the end of the year. I do think Russell Wilson shoulders blame for how he played last year, but you know what? 95% of the time over the past decade, Russell Wilson has not been the problem. It's been the offensive line around him.
But let's just look at the Seahawks OL. We signed Damian Lewis. We bring Shell. We bring Potik to a center. Iupati, I think that Iupati did not a good season, but we have Dwayne Brown, we have Damian Lewis, we have Shell. I mean, the Seahawks did not just give a bad OL. If you look at individually, every player of the offensive line, it's not a bad offensive line. Shell did a good year. Damian Lewis did a good year. Potik did a good year. Dwayne Brown, we don't even have to talk about it. But what's the real problem? Because we have good players.
I think you may be a bit optimistic. Here's the thing: left guard is an issue. Mike Iupati is retiring, so he's gone. He was inconsistent last year, so he was good at times, but struggled a lot too. So left guard is actually the most important spot that they need to solve, in my opinion.
Major problem.
More so than center, actually. I think center is just an easier position to play. Like, that's the bottom line. You're calling out protections, but you're rarely, single-handedly blocking somebody. You're typically helping somebody else protect, the quarterback. So I think Ethan Potik was decent, but I don't know if I'd call him good. Like, he's okay. But
the first part of this season, maybe, but
yeah, it's like he's just not consistently good. Like, did he have games where he played well? Absolutely. But like, was he consistently executing at that level? No, he was not. So I think center and left guard are two areas they need to prioritize. But I do agree with the spirit of what you're saying, Matthias, and that is right guard Damian Lewis is a stud. I am stoked about Damian Lewis. Like, he's their best offensive lineman they've drafted in the past decade. In this Pete Carroll and John Schneider era, there's a lot of reason to be hopeful about Damian Lewis. Like, his play did cater off a little bit as the year went on, but for a first year guard, and relative to the expectations for offensive linemen that we've had as Seahawks fans, he's a stunning success. So I share your optimism on right guard, even right tackle. Brandon Shell was great. Now the problem with last year's offensive line is like they didn't have depth. Like once Brandon Shell got injured, Upati was injured like half the year. Damian Lewis got injured. Once those guys went down, it was just they fell off a cliff. And I think it's fair to question, how good can the offensive line be, with backups when injuries happen, because you just can't control the rate of injuries. But I think you can control, if you upgrade at center and left guard this offseason. There's a ton of options.
Maybe the problem is bad coaching too. I don't know if Solari is doing a great job anymore.
Yeah, no, it's a worthy question to ask. I mean, I don't have a preference either way on Solari. I don't think he's good. I don't think he's bad. I'm unsure of him.
I think that I said this every time after the games here. It's if you watch the week 1 against the Falcons, you will see good things about the offensive line and bad things. And if you watch the last game, it's the same thing. When we are in the 5 against 4, okay, but if the defense calls a simple blitz, all problem
fall down
in our offensive line. And thinking Damian Lewis, I agree with you and share this opinion. It's a great guy, but the problems that he had in the week 1 and in the playoff game is the same. Weight base, work hand not good, and the good things that he still made. So it seems like the Mike Solari doesn't anything, because it's just come on guys, let's go guys. You are good.
I think we should say though, like, to be fair here, Russell takes a lot of sacks on him too. He holds the ball too long sometimes. I'm not going to say it's a lot, but it happens a couple times a game. There are a couple sacks per game on average that I would say are Russell Wilson's fault. I don't think it's the majority of the sacks are his fault, but I do think there's an area that Russell can improve, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we talk about the O-line, we can say two things. If we're just analyzing to see if the O-line is good enough, I think that we had a pretty decent first part, like you guys talked about it. The second part was definitely atrocious because of injuries and stuff. But the other way to analyze our O-line is thinking about from the perspective of, did Seattle actually try to improve to protect Wilson? And to answer that, I do think they did. Like we talked about, they drafted, Damian Lewis relatively early in the draft. They got Brandon Shell, which wasn't supposed to be as good as he's playing, but he was going to be an upgrade to Ifedi anyways. They tried to bring BJ Finney, which it was a huge bust, but I mean, they overpaid him, but it was a good try, I guess, coming from the Steelers. So my point is, Seattle did.
Just a minute. I don't think that BJ Finney it's a bust, because we got Carlos Dunlap with that. So I love that.
But my point is, I do think that Seattle tried to improve the O-line. Could have they done a better job? Absolutely. But they tried. And the thing is, the first part they did great. The second part they didn't. But also Wilson started playing a lot worse. Yes, partially because of the O-line. But for example, if we look at the Giants game, he had so many sacks, and if you look at the average time that he had in the pocket, clean pocket, it was actually pretty high. So like against the Giants, I blame him a lot for the sacks he took. And that's the thing, like whenever you were talking about like the leverage, Wilson has been getting so many sacks and he's demanding a better line. Absolutely. But it's just, I think it sounds weird when it comes out right after he had the worst moment in his career individually, and he kind of blames the O-line. Yes, I do think Seattle hasn't done a good job, but I think it's improving.
Let me say this. I think the fan conversation, you make a good point on that. The timing of his poor streak to end the year, which is unquestionably true. I wonder how the conversation would be different if the two parts of Russell Wilson, just Russell Wilson's season, not the team's success, but Russell Wilson's play, how would the conversation change if they were flip-flopped? So he started off the first 8 weeks really poorly, and he finished the year as an MVP candidate. How I'm not asking for an answer to this question, by the way. I'm just saying I think the conversation is dictated a little bit by how poorly he ended the year. Yes, he ended playing poorly, but let's not forget, halfway through the year, he was the leading MVP candidate in the NFL.
Yes.
By a lot.
By far.
Yeah. So it's not like Russell Wilson was shit the entire year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yes, he fell off a cliff, but I think there were multiple reasons why.
Yeah, just interrupting really quick. I don't know if you noticed, Evan, but there's like a section here on the right that you can click on the comments. There are lots of comments. Just, you don't even have to answer them, but I was laughing at one of them saying that you're too polite, and that just goes to show how Brazilians think of you.
Oh, why am I so polite today? That's so funny. Because I'm not stressed out by watching a Seahawks game recently.
Your heart's okay today.
Yeah, I guess that's the answer.
And about stress, what do you think about the job of the John Schneider in the free agency in the draft? We know that Seattle renewed the contracts of the Pete Carroll and John Schneider. What do you think about that?
So, I don't know if you know this about me, but I have a John Schneider jersey that I customized. I literally customized it, and it's in my closet, and I have not worn it in several years. And I am slowly becoming convinced that John Schneider is a bigger problem than we realize. And that is somebody who loves John Schneider. I know John Schneider personally. He and I have texted back in previous years. I was looking for a cap position in the NFL several years ago. He gave me tons of good advice. John Schneider's a really good guy. First of all, I want to say that. Phenomenal person, phenomenal dude. But he has this sort of reputation as like a top 5 NFL GM. And I'm not sure that's true anymore. I'm not sure. I'm not saying he's a bad GM. I just think in recent years, there's some really questionable moves that he's made. For the most part, the 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 drafts, not great. If we're looking at the 27, whatever draft was the Chris Carson, Ethan Posick draft, I think that was 2017. So that 2017 draft, we might exit and start this next year with 0 players on the roster from the 2017 draft. That's just an example as to, I think, and it's not, the threshold for success is not their 2012, 2013, 2014 drafts or 2013 drafts. I want to be clear about that. I'm not expecting them to draft, Legion of Boom Hall of Famers in like the 5th and 6th round pick, but I am expecting them to draft. I think the threshold for success is drafting, starters, 2 to 3 starters out of every single draft. You don't have to get Hall of Fame players, but you have to get capable starters. In the past 5 years, they have missed on that objective more than they have made those accomplishments. So I think John Schneider is low key becoming a problem. And I'll say something that you guys are probably going to hate. I hate the Jamal Adams trade. I hate it. I hated. Here's the thing. Jamal Adams is such a fun player. So this is not a critique on Jamal Adams. I love Jamal Adams. He's so fun. Like he reminds me of Earl Thomas, like in his personality. He's just kind of like a freak. and I love it. He's just like this, like when you listen to him, in the media interviews and stuff, he's got an awesome personality. So I want to be clear. This is not a critique on Jamal Adams. But the process by which they acquired Jamal Adams, the capital they gave up for Jamal Adams, the fact that they didn't make an extension a part of the Jamal Adams trade, they're still hopefully they're in extension talks. I mean, by the time Jamal Adams gets an extension from this team, guys, he's probably going to get like $19 million a year.
Yeah, that's the major problem.
it's just like so. I want to be clear. I love Jamal Adams. It's the method by which they acquired Jamal Adams, how they did it. Was an extension a part of the trade? No, it was not. There were just multiple missteps here, and I think Seattle's going to pay for it. And frankly, those missteps fall on John Schneider's head.
The problem is that Seattle should trade for Jamal and already have a contract. Like, we have already extension your contract, so it's like that.
And that's very normal. To be clear, that should be the expectation.
Yeah,
look what happened. Yeah. Look what happened with Tunsil when he was traded from Miami, star left tackle, top 3 left tackle in the NFL, got traded from Miami to the Texans for like 2 first-round picks and some change. Okay, and a deal was not an extension was not a part of the trade, and the NFL media world was like stunned. NFL agents were stunned that it was not, because all of a sudden that player and his agent have a crazy amount of leverage. Like,
yes,
are you telling me that those teams are going to piss away 2 first-round picks and the extra draft capital and let him walk in free agency? Of course they're not. So all of a sudden they're being bent over the kitchen table and, just getting taken with a huge, they're just going to end up dishing out a ton of money to these guys. Yes. And Tunsil ended up beating the left tackle market by like $3 million. Okay. So it was like 19 to 22 or something or 19.5 to 22.5. The current safety market is like $14.5 million a year. It's Budda Baker, okay, in Arizona. There's several big safeties that are about to get extended over the next year. I'll call out 2 that I think are going to break the market. Derwin James in San Diego, and then Justin Simmons in Denver. Both guys are going to reset the market. There's an NFL agent, Joel Corey, that came out yesterday and said he thinks Justin Simmons is going to get just under $17 million a year. Okay, so if Justin Simmons gets $17 million a year, let's say Derwin James signs after him, and he gets $18 million a year. Okay, so suddenly the threshold for the safety market is $18 million a year. Okay, now couple that with what Jamal Adams has in leverage against the Seahawks in 2 first-round picks, and I think it's a 3rd-round pick is the other one. If I was Jamal Adams, I would dare Seattle to let me walk. I would start negotiations at $25 million a year. I'm not even kidding. Make them say no. Make them say no. Make them piss away 2 first-round picks. They're not going to. They are absolutely not going to let him walk. So if I now, I'm not saying Jamal Adams needs to do that, but if I was in Jamal Adams' position, you sure as hell bet I would. I would make Seattle pay for making that misstep. So I think Seattle's going to get fucked on that contract.
We should have done this with Jadeveon Clowney too.
Yeah, I mean, Clowney is an interesting one because his value is like rock bottom right now because he played like half the season last year and, had no sacks in 8 games. I think he's a candidate they should bring back. And a lot of people hate me for that take, but like his value is so low that it might make sense. Like if you could get him on a 1-year, $4 million deal, 2 years, $10 million, like his value's really low right now. It might make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And going off of what you were saying about Jamal Adams, I also think that Seattle should extend him as soon as possible because of that, because Justin Simmons, Derwin James are going to get new contracts, and we could push the cap hit, to later years, so it helps us now. So that's why a lot of Seattle fans here in Brazil are really frustrated because it seems like Seattle is not doing anything. But a question I want to ask you about the Jamal Adams trade is a feeling that I personally had is that when Russell Wilson came out in the offseason and said that Seattle needed to bring another star, Russell Wilson, it was all over the news that Russell Wilson was asking for another star. How much pressure did that put into Seattle to make a trade for Jamal Adams and have to pay that much to, I don't know if to please Russell Wilson would be the better way to say this, but
I'll be honest with you. I don't think it played any factor. No? I think that trade was driven by Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll has been looking for a safety since Earl Thomas left to play his cover 3 high, and he just hasn't had a player like Earl Thomas, a player like Cam Chancellor in the safety position since both those guys retired. Well, I guess Earl Thomas didn't retire. He's had an interesting situation, but Jamal Adams was he's probably one of the best safeties in the NFL, probably top 2. Has some coverage inconsistency issues, but I think that was mainly a Pete Carroll-driven move. I really do.
Yeah. And if you're a GM right now, and you could hire 3 guys now for the Seahawks, who they are?
Like players in free agency?
Yeah.
I think Corey Linsley is. I know I said left guard was maybe my number 1 target, but like a good center. Like I know it's an easier to do position, but like all the Hall of Fame quarterbacks, like Tom Brady in New England, Peyton Manning in Denver, Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, they've all had really excellent centers throughout their entire career to help call protections at the line and sort of spy on what the defense is doing. Veterans at that position are a super underrated part of the offense. So Corey Linsley is kind of like my number 1 name in free agency. 2 other names. Jason Verrett, I think is how you say his name, out of San Francisco. Cornerback. He before joining San Francisco or Santa Clara last year, he had like 3 straight years of like ACL tears, but like he's a super talented dude. Like he's an all-pro level cornerback talent. And last year in San Francisco, he played like 12 or 13 games for them, but was an absolute stud. I think if you can get him at a reasonable price in free agency, just based off of that sort of injury concern around him, which is fair. He may very well end up only playing like 6 games next year or something like that. But I think it might come at a price that makes gambling on an all-pro level corner like that talent worth it. So I'd say Jason Verrett, Corey Linsley. And honestly, if you want to double down and go get Joe Thuney at left guard, do it. One of the best left guards of the NFL. All of a sudden, that left side of the line, you'd have Dwayne Brown, Joe Thuney, and Corey Linsley. That's a stud offensive line. You know.
And you still have Dwayne Brown.
Yeah. So those are the 3 names I would say.
And some insiders talk about the possibility of the reunion with Richard Sherman and the Seahawks again. Did you like that? Do you like that?
It depends on the price. I'm not in the camp of bring Richard Sherman back at all costs. Like if they need to pay a lot to get him, I'll pass. He's 33, like 32, something like that. I don't really view Seattle as like a ideal landing spot for him. I think there's still some tension between him and Pete Carroll and how that whole situation kind of ended in 2018 with him being cut. So it'd be nice to have him back, but not if he costs too much.
And you agree that there are some protection in Russell Wilson about with Pete Carroll, like Richard Sherman said, or Thomas said, Doug Baldwin said. I think that is a tweet that something I don't know if you retweet something like that. That are some wide receivers that don't like so much Russell Wilson because he improvised so much and something like that. So Doug Baldwin, Richard Sherman, some guy that are more trash talkers and something like that talk about this protection. I think that there is real and it's good or not.
It definitely exists, that tension. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it exists, but it exists. And I've heard from players like I spoke with a player on Seattle's defense last week that said, yeah, that's nothing new. Like there have absolutely been player concerns throughout the past decade with how this team treats Russell Wilson internally within the organization. And I'm not saying those comments are fair or justified, frankly, but I'm just saying they exist. Frankly, I don't know enough about why they exist or what specifically it's about to have an opinion, but they exist.
Okay. And I feel like when Russell Wilson comes out, I know I'm kind of rewinding to what we were talking about earlier, but when Russell Wilson comes out and says these things about the O-line, how does that come across to the other players in the locker room? Like, oh, he's kind of pointing fingers at and they know that Pete Carroll kind of protects him a little bit. So I just worry that even if we bring good O-line, the things he has said to the press might still hurt us.
I don't think you're fully wrong, but this is what I'll say. If I'm a left tackle, or not a left tackle, if I'm just an offensive lineman in that locker room and Russell Wilson says that after how the offensive line played over the final 8 games of last year, I don't think I'm offended by Russell saying we need to play better. Our offensive line needs to play better. I need to play better. The quarterback needs to play better too. Like any offensive lineman who says they don't need to play better based off of the last 8 weeks of last year doesn't deserve a job for this
Absolutely.
team.
And I agree with that. But don't you think that, I feel like NFL players have a lot of ego, because of their background and stuff. I just feel, I'm not talking about like me. I would be fine too. Like I would be like, okay, I do have to improve. I would take the feedback. It's Russell Wilson. What am I going to say?
Let me counter that. Who are the 2 guys he's probably talking about? Ethan Posick and Mike Iupati. Those are the 2 worst guys on the offensive line. And guess what? They're both probably gone.
Yeah, true. Yeah. True. I don't know. I just feel like, what if there is a click? Like, I don't know. For some reason, Iupati or Posick, they were best friends with somebody else. This other guy will, be upset about it.
But here's the thing. Russell wasn't everybody knows Russell wasn't talking about Dwayne Brown. Russell wasn't talking about Brandon Shell. Russell wasn't talking Damian Lewis. It's like those 3 guys that are going to be here next year. We all know Russell was not talking about. Like it was the left guard and center position. So I'm not disagreeing though with the spirit of your comments. Like that potential exists. You're right. There's a huge ego, but I guess my counter would be, if those guys didn't want to improve and they don't think they needed to improve, then fuck them. They didn't deserve to be here.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I guess the thing that upsets me the most about Russell is because, like, I used to live in Seattle, and how Seattle talks about Russell is just like, it's so much more than just a player. He's really part of the community, and he's the I don't have to tell you because you obviously know that. And I wouldn't analyze Russell Wilson's situation the same way I would analyze any other player, because I do think he's different. Like his mentality, he's so altruistic, and passionate about everything. He's very religious, and that it takes a big role in everything he does. And because of that, I'm just very surprised by how he's handling everything. I do see, like, the way you were analyzing, saying I would just ask for a lot of money, I wouldn't restructure my contract. I do think the majority of the players would think that way. It just surprises me that Russell, because of, we know him, we've seen him throughout years, and it just doesn't, it seems out of character to me.
Yeah, I'll just say this. The Russell you see in the media is not the Russell you see behind closed doors. And that's not to say Russell's a bad person behind closed doors. I just think he's extremely motivated and extremely determined for personal success. And frankly, he should be. Like,
he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Yeah, he's not wrong. Name a person, like, you'd be lying to yourself if you said you didn't want to be successful in your own career, didn't want to make a ton of money, didn't want to leave a legacy. Like, that's success. And ultimately, that's what he should care about.
Okay. So Evan, I would like to thank you for this interview, and I would like to make a new invite for later. We have some questions that I will already answer during the interview, but it's awesome for us interview someone in the football in the US and linked so much to the Seahawks. So I would like to thank you very much for this opportunity for us. It's huge for us, and about all things that you said here. We had some joke here in Brazil against the 49ers. So someone in the chat asked I talked to you to said Chupa Niners. It's like Suck Niners. Bye.
Yeah. I hate that team, man.
Could you say for
what's the phrase? Repeat it for me.
Chupa Niners.
Chupa Niners.
Chupa Niners.
Yeah.
Chupa Niners.
Chupa
Niners.
Actually, once I was at San Diego, and for Niners fans, I was with the Seahawks shirt jersey, and she said for her daughter, come here, don't stay, don't be close to him. I went, what? She was a 49ers fan, and she was really pissed off with me because I was wearing a Seahawks jersey at San Diego.
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, hey, gents, I gotta say thank you so much for having me on today. Yeah. The one thing I will say is, like, I'm so impressed with the Brazilian fan base. You guys are like ridiculous. You guys are like so out there and so loud and so vocal on Twitter and just involved in everything. Keep it up. I'm like seriously impressed. Like it's cool to see, like, you know, just people be a fan of your team outside of your state, outside of your country. It's just cool to meet other fans around the world who share the same passion as you sports wise. So I'm glad to know that there are some Brazilian people who absolutely hate the Seahawks as much as I do. So I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Evan.
I was going to say that, you know, you're seeing how big NFL is here, but you have no idea. It's a lot bigger than you think. And did you see when Russell Wilson came to Rio in Brazil? It was
I was aware of it.
Yeah, look up the videos. It's crazy. People got tattoos of the autographs he signed. Like, it was insane. I do think that within the next 5 to 10 years, there is going to be an NFL game in Brazil. It's growing a lot in here. And also, yeah, I just want to thank you in general. We know we were telling you that you're famous here because to us, when you're living in Brazil, you guys are, you know, our sources for everything. Sure. And I have gotten mad at you so many times on Twitter. I have muted you, unmuted you. Currently, you're unmuted, but
I don't blame you at all. I encourage it, actually.
Yeah, I do look forward to, you know, talking to you more in the future and maybe showing you how big our community is and how passionate we are about the Seahawks.
Yeah, well, I love to travel. Hopefully, I get to Brazil one day, and I'll hit you guys up to show me around.
Absolutely, let us know.
The last thing I'll say is I was traveling through Germany 2 or 3 years ago, and it kind of reminds me of this situation. There's like weirdly, like a huge Seahawks fan base in Germany. Like, I would just randomly, I wore like a Seahawks hoodie like throughout traveling, and I would just see random Seahawks fans, and it was just like, what is this? Like, you don't even see other NFL teams. So I love it. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much, Evan.
Happy to come back on soon. Hopefully the Seahawks make some good moves in free agency, and and we'll chat soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Go Hawks, guys. See ya.
Go Hawks.